I'm just a volunteer now, but I was with Eric and several of the others who've been here over the years, one of the producers, and a lot of what my job entailed was editing your recordings, and it was a privilege to do so. And I just wanted to remind you of a few things. That's basically all I'm going to present, things that you already know. Allow time to preview the material so you are neither surprised nor rushed. Well, that's a good thing to keep in mind. And before you leave your home to come in here, start there in terms of your sense of timing. We schedule you, if you're going to read an hour-long program, we schedule you for 2 hours booth time. And if you're really proficient, you may be able to finish your reading in an hour and 10 minutes. Some people do. They do a marvelous job doing so. But if you're new to us, it's really good to allow that 2 hours as your time. And if you need any more, I guess you could check with our volunteer coordinator, Rachel, or anybody who's on staff that day. So that's one thing that I always recommend. If you're running behind time, let somebody on the staff know about it if you're here on a day like that. If you're reading newspapers, which you are facing a deadline as to when they're going to air, definitely let somebody know. It's best not to sound rushed. If you are rushed, if you have to run out of here and go to work or another appointment, sometimes your reading will be rushed. You will sound as if you are really trying to reach a goal, and somehow in your mind you read too quickly and you create a lot of errors. And the information that you had on editing is really essential because it is up to you to correct those errors as best you can. Your producers and editors are there to catch anything that you might have left behind. Then there's the matter of punctuation. Your text is loaded with it, but yet that's just the silent part. You're reading the words, you're injecting inflection to emphasize the parts of your text that you're trying to bring to life. Punctuation is there mainly just to guide you. I think of it as road signs. I want to share a short story with you that there are extremes to overemphasizing punctuation. You heard Susan talk earlier about avoiding the quote-unquote mechanism. I had been working in the Macon studio of GARS for many years, and one of my duties there was to conduct auditions. I was the only staff member, so I was the trainer. I recruited. I scheduled you all to read down there. And somebody I met had a wonderful reading voice. I thought she'd be great. She was a paralegal assistant and a court reporter, so I thought it would be great to get her in there. And I finally succeeded, and I sat her down. And she began reading the audition. I wish I still had that tape. I'd play it for you. But what I heard was just kind of unbelievable. I found some text that I think I can use to illustrate what she was reading. And she introduced herself. This is Laura Smith reading for GARS, the Georgia Radio Reading Service. This is an oral audition. And she started reading the text. Open quote, "The role of congressional oversight is to ask the tough questions, comma, to push back on the decisions, comma, to request additional information and to red check the numbers, comma, close quote," Senator Warren said in an interview at the time. Open quote, "It's our job to be cranky, period, close quote." Next sentence, "and cranky she was, period." And yet she persisted. The whole audition was that way. But to paraphrase Irving Berlin from one of his songs, outside of that, I loved her. So I encouraged her to come back and told her the problem. And yes, that's what you do when you're a court reporter. You record that way. But once we got that out of the way, that was fine. But the punctuation, yes. You know when you get to the end of a sentence, you'll see the period. That's a good time for you to stop and pause. If you need, take a breath, and then start the next sentence. Use inflection when you are getting into a quote. And personal experience, I'll share with you, I just musically raise my voice a little bit higher, depending on what I've been able to surmise about the person doing the speaking in the text. The role of congressional oversight is to ask the tough questions, to push back on the decisions, to request additional information, and to recheck the numbers, Senator Warren said in an interview at the time. And that's basically how you bring a quote to life. It's just as simple as that. You have things called commas. Sometimes I think of them as speed bumps. They're there to deliberately slow you down. Try not to skip over your commas. Include them in how you were delivering your sentences and readings. Remember, you're also reading to listeners, and they would expect that to you. So that's part of the pitfall you get into when you're reading a little bit too quickly. Using reading at the appropriate speed, that's going to be evident once you start reading the material. If you are running behind time, and if you're a book reader, you've got the advantage over the live readers because you can turn in your cart log and finish that reading on another visit if you have to. It just requires creating a separate tape the next time, but our producers can fuse those together to make a full hour of the 2 fractions of an hour that you recorded. That's just some advice I would give to you. Be aware of your mistakes and correct them. Again, if you're racing through your text reading, you will make those mistakes. And if you're not aware of them, they go uncorrected. And more often than not, that'll fall on the producers to correct that. I've been known to insert my own gaps if somebody has read through a comma. And I know that there's a comma that should be there. Fortunately, if you've been reading a book, we have the book available. I can go back and look through it, and oh, there it is, page 62. Yep, there was a comma there. So I'll just go ahead and, through the miracle of Adobe Audition, our editing software, I can pop that in there. Pronunciation, correct pronunciation is quite important certainly in this age of multiple languages appearing. Foreign names are really something we find on a regular basis in reading the news. We have pronunciation tools available. Most of the computers have the Voice of America pronunciation guide on them, and there's that computer over on the right that has some of that software. You can open it up and type in the name of the person or the city that you're having difficulty pronouncing, and that should help. Also, there are dictionaries on hand in each of the booths.
Both online and in the drawers.
Mm-hmm. You can Google it if you have that facility. You can use Wikipedia. Quite often, the person you are reading about is in Wikipedia, and Wikipedia usually gives a phonetic pronunciation of the word. And then there's the other alternative. If there's somebody on staff, you could ask. I had the good fortune many years ago to work with helping Polish immigrants learn how to speak English so that they could do their work in research at Emory University. This was many years ago. As a result, I had to take some basic lessons in Polish and some other European languages. And when you're reading books and stories with characters, you have to remember that some of the consonants are pronounced differently than they are in English. The letter J, for instance. One of the most popular first names in English is John. In Polish, it's pronounced Jan, although it's spelled Jan. And that's just a simple thing to know. However, if you have trouble with other Polish names, those are in the pronunciation guides too. Spanish, there's another language where certain consonants are pronounced or not pronounced. The J is pronounced like we pronounce an H, Javier. Then there's also H, which isn't pronounced. Then there's Portuguese, which pronounces both the H's and the J's, but you just have to know that going into it.